Good morning, class. So today we will keep continuing with Mahabharat. Yesterday I spoke about how I explained what an epic is, and after that I stressed on the first episode which we have in our syllabus, which is the dicing. And today we will do the sequel to dicing, and then another episode called the temptation of Karna. Okay, so I hope that you remember what we have already discussed in the last class, and if you weren't there or for whatever reason if you couldn't log in, I hope that I think that all of these get recorded and then you can watch it later. Okay, so make sure that you watch the the previous class later. Okay, so now I hope that you can see my PPT. I think it's visible. And another thing, in the Q&A, you can post questions and everything else. And yeah, okay, so I am able to see some comments there. And if you can just type good morning everyone, and if you can see some and if you can see my PPT, just tell me that you can see it. Just say yes, PPT is visible or whatever. Just type in the live Q&A, okay, so that I can continue. So I'm just going to wait for at least one comment to show up so that I know that the PPT is visible. Yeah, and why did the class not start? Because we have somebody from the technical team to come and make me live. So I was here and the person wasn't there. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of comments. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to start now, and I'm glad that many of you could join today, and hopefully you will enjoy the class. And I will. So let's start. All right. So I had already spoke about the dicing scene. The dicing scene is basically the scene where Shakuni and Duryodhan, they invite the Pandavas to a dicing game, and they lose everything, and they lose themselves, and they lose also Draupadi, and then her disrobing happens, which in Hindi we call Chirharan. And then in the end of the scene, what we find out is that Dhritarashtra, he sees a lot of bad omens, and he sees like jackals making noises and animals making noises, and he sees it as a bad omen. So he gives everything back to the Pandavas, and he gives Draupadi 3 boons or 3 wishes, and she says that she, in her boon, the first wish, she says that please free Yudhishthir, and then in the next boon she asks all her husbands to be free, and then they get everything back and nothing really happens, and then they leave. Okay, now this is where we ended. So now we are continuing in what happens in the next scene, the sequel to the dicing. Okay, so here what are the main things that in this unit that we talk about now? This unit will acquaint us with the compulsions of dharma. Okay, dharma and adharma also I touched upon the topic in the last class, that made Yudhishthira return to the assembly hall. So what happens here is that there are some key elements in this particular text, and we're going to talk about it, right? So first thing is that they already in the dicing sequel, they already lose the game, and then they get everything back, and then they leave. But again, they are called back. They're again called back for another game. And Yudhishthira does not refuse. And why doesn't he refuse? This is because of his dharma. And we will talk about this more, okay? And it will also introduce a seminal theme. A seminal theme means a very crucial, a very important theme, which is the king's folly. King's folly, matlab the king's mistake, the king's error, which is his blind love for his son. Okay, and the king here, we're talking about Dhritarashtra, and the son we're talking about is Duryodhan. Okay, now this unit, as in like this section, is basically, it sets the tone, as in this is the reason what happens in this unit is basically what ultimately leads to the war in Mahabharata, which is the war of the Kurukshetra. Okay. So why is it called the sequence to dicing? It is because it's an extension of the dicing sequence. All right, and the objective of this unit is to help us trace the dramatic elements in the narrative. So what really happens in the sequence also highlights a lot of features that are very common to epics. Okay, and we already talked about what epics are and how do you define them and what are the very specific features of an epic. Okay, so we will touch upon that. Now, what happens in the story? Now let's talk about what really goes on in the story. So it begins with the Pandavas' departure from Dhritarashtra's court. So they already have lost the game. They win everything. They are given everything back, and they leave. So no harm done. Yeah, and we are told that that right after Pandavas leave, Duryodhan starts to plot again. You know, he starts to make a plan again to how to defeat them, and he starts to talk with Karna and Shakuni. Okay, and he quickly goes to his father, King Dhritarashtra, and he says that, you know, call back the Pandavas. Unko wapas bulao. Now, Dhritarashtra plots yet another game of dice. He says that we will call them back and have yet another game. We will play another game with them, and when they lose, we will exile them. Exile them, matlab we will send them out of the kingdom. Means that we will send them in the forest. Okay. And he says that, you know, he's confident that, you know, Shakuni can never lose. Remember in the last class I said that Shakuni can never lose a game of dice. So that's for sure that they will get exiled. Okay, so they say we will exile them for 13 years. And Dhritarashtra is very scared that, you know, he knows that this is not a very fair way to do things, but he's also very tempted. He's very tempted because he also wants to make sure that the whole kingdom goes to his son. Okay, so he gives the order to call the Pandavas back, and so he sends a messenger, and Yudhishthir, when he hears that, you know, the king has called him back, and he knows that, you know, this will only lead to something bad, but he still decides to, you know, honor the word of the king, because this is his dharma. When Yudhishthir is a king and Dhritarashtra is a king, and when one king calls the other, it's the dharma of the other king. It's Kshatriya dharma to respond to it. So he cannot turn it down. It's his dharma to respond to it. So he has to go back. So therefore, even though he knows that, you know, the consequences of the second game, it's not going to lead to something good. So it's going to bring war and destruction. But yet he obeys the Dhritarashtra and he goes back for the game because it's in his dharma. It's the dharma says so that if one king calls you, you must go back and respond. Okay. Now, continuing the story, then they again have a game, and in the first game, again Pandavas lose everything to Shakuni. Okay, and according to the logic of the game, now the terms and conditions were that if they lose the game, what is going to happen is the defeated group will go and live in the forest. Means that they will give up their kingdom. They will not go back to Indraprastha where the Pandavas live. They will give up their kingdom, and there they will live for 12 years in the forest. And in the final year, in the 13th year, they have to live in disguise. Disguise meaning that in the final year of the forest, they have to be living somewhere or in a way that nobody can find them. Nobody knows who they are. Okay, so they have to be in disguise. And if they get caught, if somebody finds that, oh, these are the Pandavas, then again they have to do another 12 years in forest. Okay, so this is the terms and conditions. Now they lose, and now again because of the Kshatriya code of honor, because of their dharma, they do not you know, contest it. They do not disagree. They agree because they are, you know, because they want to follow the law. Okay, because they lost, so they agree that okay, we will go to the forest. All right. So the Pandavas, they change their clothes. They are no longer royals. They change out of their royal clothes and they wear deer skin. Deer skin literally means you know, the like deer ki chamdi basically. Okay, and they proceed on to their journey to the forest. Okay, they go to the forest. They've lost the game. Now in the sequence before, you know, before the story, Dhritarashtra thought that he had successfully handled the situation. Why did he think so? Because when Pandavas lost everything, when they lost themselves, when they lost Draupadi, Dhritarashtra had said that okay, you know, it's okay, you can have everything back, and they say okay, you can go. So Dhritarashtra thinks that, you know, he thinks that he's handled the situation well. Okay, now he also gives 3 wishes to Draupadi as a compensation for, you know, they trying to disrobe her and they trying to humiliate her. However, when Duryodhan creates this fear in the king's mind, he says that you know, we really insulted the Pandavas in the last game. We made them slaves and we insulted their wife. So if we leave an enemy which is wounded but not vanquished, means not destroyed. If we leave an enemy like जो wounded है but उसको हमने एकदम पूरी तरह से खत्म नहीं किया है, that is a very big mistake, because this means that this wounded enemy is very angry and then they will come back for revenge, and therefore we must vanquish them, we must crush them now only, because if we don't crush them now, then they will come back for revenge for what they have done to us. So that's the logic. He says that unko वापस बुलाओ and unko exile कर दो, because if we don't do this, then they will try to take revenge for what we have done to them. Okay. Now, why does Duryodhana want to call the Pandavas back? Okay. So again, I'm just going to elaborate what I just said. Duryodhana raises an alarm that the Pandavas have left swearing and challenging the Kauravas since, and so whatever is in italics you see, those are quotes. Those are quotes from the text that you have in your syllabus. Okay, so make sure that you buy the book and buy the prescribed book which you have in your syllabus. Don't buy any other random Mahabharata, because there are many different translations and we are not looking at other Mahabharatas. जो आपके जो course में है वही लेना है. Okay, so we have offended them and they will never forgive us. Who among them could forgive the molestation of Draupadi? Right? So that's what Duryodhan says, that they left because they left and they were angry and they were very upset, and if we leave them now, if we let them go, then they will take revenge because we had molested Draupadi. Okay, now what it looks like is Duryodhan is very scared, like he's fearful, knowing that he has done something very bad. Okay, therefore he emphasizes the pressing need for the Kauravas to protect themselves and to eliminate the enemy. So Duryodhan knows that what he did with Draupadi and what he did with the Pandavas in the previous sequence, it was very bad, it was something horrible. So he is very scared that the Pandavas will come for revenge, and therefore the Kauravas must already protect themselves, and therefore they must eliminate the enemy. So note how he creates the panic in his father. So see how he talks to his father. He says, "Father, the Pandavas have grasped their swords, they have mounted their chariots, and they are enraged. In their fury, they will annihilate us like poisonous snakes." So he's basically now, making his father very, Dhritarashtra very, very nervous. He's saying that, they are very angry, and he's calling Pandavas poisonous snakes. Okay. Now we note the urgency in the Duryodhan's tone. We see that how scared he is, how urgent he thinks that we must call them back and fix this problem. He makes Dhritarashtra believe that the threat is real. He thinks that so up until this point, we don't actually know that if Pandavas will come and take revenge for what happened. In the previous sequence, they lose everything, but they're given everything back and they leave. So we don't know if this is actually going to happen, or if this is just Duryodhan making stuff up, saying that Pandavas will come for revenge. We don't know if this is what the Pandavas are really thinking, but this is what Duryodhan tells his father. He makes his father scared that the Pandavas will come back for revenge, and therefore they have to be dealt with. Okay, and it is also very ironic. It is interesting that Duryodhan calls Pandavas the poisonous snakes when he is the one who is planning and plotting and trying to destroy them. Okay, so now continuing, the final purpose of why Duryodhan talks like this, and he creates this image of Pandavas. They're rushing out in anger in order to start a war. He does so because it might be that Duryodhan is lying, that the Pandavas are not angry at all, or they are not trying to start a war, but Duryodhan says that to his father because he wants to have another game where he can send Pandavas to the forest. Okay, so he says, "We must dice again with the Pandavas. Bless you to send them to the forest, and so we shall be able to bring them in our power." Okay, now again, why is he doing all this? Why was the purpose of the first dicing sequence? What was the purpose कि सबसे पहले ही वो शतरंज का खेल क्यों खेला गया था? That was basically because Duryodhan was scared, or he was jealous that the Pandavas are too powerful. They're very wealthy. They have a lot of allies. They're powerful, and he wants to take away the power from them. He wants to be the most powerful person in the kingdom. So it's really a question about power and supremacy. कि कौन सबसे ज़्यादा powerful है, कौन सबसे ज़्यादा strong है. Okay. And so Duryodhan really cannot, he cannot be quiet. He cannot find peace of mind till he knows that he is going to be the sole heir, as in that he's going to be the prince of the entire kingdom, and that Pandavas are no threat to him, that the Pandavas cannot take the kingdom away from him. Okay. Now the threat of the Pandavas come back to claim, he's just worried that the Pandavas will come back and ask for the kingdom. That is what he's worried for. So we don't know if the Pandavas are actually planning to do it. This is all basically in Duryodhan's head. He thinks that this is what is going to happen. Okay. So we don't know if this is actually really going to happen. But he just wants to make sure that the Pandavas are not there, that they are not a threat, that they cannot do this. He does not want to even have that possibility of this happening. Okay. So further, all along, he has been aware of the opinions of the elders in the family, right? And the point is that Duryodhan knows that what the elders, matlab, Dhritarashtra, Drona, Bhishma, and all of them, he knows that, that they all know that Pandavas actually have the rightful claim to the throne. The Pandava, and he knows that Pandavas, jo hai, wahi, unko hi, they are the rightful rulers of Hastinapur. Okay, so he knows this, but and also noted that up until, and Pandavas have never said ki you give us the throne. They have never demanded it. Okay, and still Duryodhan still thinks that Pandavas will ask for it and they will demand it, and so he sees them as a threat, and therefore they must have to be eradicated. Therefore they must have to be sent into exile. Okay, now that's why, and then so he makes the final plea, matlab he makes a final request to the king for saving the kingdom. Okay, he says, we shall be firmly rooted in the kingdom as we embrace our allies and keep contested a vast, a mettlesome, and invincible army. If they survive the vow after 13 years, we shall vanquish them. So he's saying, so as I said, that even though Pandavas have never asked for the throne, has never asked that they want to rule Hastinapur, Duryodhan is still scared that they will demand for it, and therefore he wants to make sure that he is that the Pandavas have no chance for doing it. So therefore he thinks that if they send them to the forest for 13 years, Duryodhan doesn't think that they will survive. They think that they will die. Okay, so he thinks that अगर ये लोग तो बचेंगे नहीं, इनका कुछ हो नहीं सकता, तो 12 साल में तो मर ही जाएंगे, और उसके बाद 13th ईयर में they have to stay in hiding, और कैसे हाइडिंग में रहेंगे, because ये तो पांडवास हैं, सबको जानते हैं, तो somebody will reveal who they are, and then again they have to do another 13 years. And another reason for sending them for the forest for 13 years is he thinks that in these 13 years he can build a big strong army. He can prepare himself, that he can fight, and he can build a strong army, and so on and so forth. So it also gives them the time to build a stronger army if the Pandavas survive the 13 years in the forest. And the more optimistic hope is that they will not, that they would just die in the forest. Okay, so what ultimately happens is Dhritarashtra, he believes that he is, so after hearing all this, okay, after Duryodhan tells him that Pandavas are very angry and they will try to take revenge, so we must stop them, we must do something. So when Dhritarashtra gives the orders that okay, fine, call them back, have another game of dice, he thinks that he's basically saving the Kauravas. He thinks that agar और एक डाइस का गेम मैंने नहीं अलाउ किया और पांडवास को एग्जाम में नहीं भेजा, तो then Pandavas will just come and destroy the Kauravas. Okay, so he thinks that he's basically saving the Kauravas. Dhritarashtra doesn't know that his son is lying, that the Pandavas, the Pandavas really have never expressed any intention of taking the throne from them, right? So yes, in the end of the Kurukshetra war happens because they both of them start fighting, but the idea of but this is basically because they had because the Kauravas had sent them to exile and had insulted Draupadi. But the point is, up until this point, before the dicing game, Dhritarashtra was already in Hastinapur. Duryodhan was already in Hastinapur, and so there was no real threat. The Pandavas were ruling Indraprastha, which is a different city. Okay, and it was all in Duryodhan's mind कि वो लोग ले लेंगे हस्तिनापुर, तो उनको हराओ, उनको exile में करो, and it is because उन्होंने ये किया that triggered Pandavas' revenge against them. Had he not done anything, then Duryodhan would have automatically become the king, and because Pandavas never wanted Hastinapur in the beginning. Okay, so what really happens here is so when Dhritarashtra says, okay, you can call back the Pandavas, because he thinks that agar nahi bulaya to they will destroy everything. Okay, they will destroy the Kaurav clan. Now you can also think another interpretation as to why Dhritarashtra allows the second game, that you can say that it is because uh, even though the king sees the doom, even though the king knows कि उनको दोबारा बुला के उनको दोबारा game हरा के it's going to be something very bad will happen, he still goes ahead. Like the king knows that something. So there are two interpretations. Try to understand this. That one interpretation is he calls them back because he genuinely thinks that उनको बुला के उनको exile करके it would be a good idea to save the Kaurava clan. The other interpretation is that he knows that that calling back the Pandavas will eventually, and making them lose the game, will eventually lead to something bad, and yet he still does it because of his love for his son, because he loves his son. Okay, and his son wants to have another game of dice, and therefore he calls his son. Therefore he says, okay, fine. He just basically gives in to what his son wants. Okay, so Dhritarashtra is sufficiently convinced by his son to hold another game, even though Dhritarashtra को बोला जाता है कि नहीं, don't ये ऐसा मत करिए, don't call him back, don't do this again. He still calls them back. Okay, so now here's another main topic, which is a father's blind love for his son, right? So why does, let's assume, or let's interpret it this way, that Dhritarashtra knows that calling back the Pandavas for another game of dice and sending them to forest would ultimately lead to something very bad, which does ultimately lead to the Kurukshetra war, right? So why does he still do it? Is it because Dhritarashtra fears that if he doesn't listen to his son, then something bad, then his son will reject him, that his son will not love him anymore? Is it just because he's a very indulgent father that he just listens to his son? Okay, or is it because of his fatalistic view of things that makes him see his decisions as predetermined? Again, now this question or this argument takes us back to the idea that how in the Mahabharata the idea in the Mahabharata is that everything is pre-decided. Okay, everything is pre-decided, everything has been written. It's the idea in Mahabharata is that होने को कोई टाल नहीं सकता. Okay, जो होगा वो होगा. Okay, basically the idea is that your fate is written. You cannot change your fate. And for those who were in the class yesterday, this was one of the main points that I raised, that the key features of Mahabharata is, one, the idea of dharma and adharma, that dharma is the way of life. The idea of what was it? Tatho dharma jatho jaya, which basically means that where there is dharma, where there will be victory. That is the first main thing in the Mahabharata. The second main thing is that everything is predetermined, that jo hoga wo dekha jayega, honi ko koi dal nahi sakta. However, Mahabharata also stresses on the fact that even though everything is decided, human beings or people, our actions or how we respond to our fate, how we live our lives is also very important. Yes, human beings cannot change their fate, but the way they live their lives, the way they respond is also important, right? So in this question, when we talk about why did Dhritarashtra allow the Pandavas to be called back, one is that, first I already said that, maybe he genuinely thinks that this is the best way to save the Kauravas. The second thing is that even though he knows that this is not a good idea, he still does it because he loves his son and he does not want his son to hate him, to reject him for not listening to him. And the third reason could be that he just thinks that, he just knows that, whatever he does doesn't matter, because ultimately jo jiske kismat mein hai wo to dekha hi jayega. Okay, so everything is determined. Okay, now Gandhari in this scene gives an impression of being more rational than her husband, because Dhritarashtra is clearly, emotional, is getting emotionally manipulated by Duryodhan, right? But Gandhari here is the one who is very rational. She tells Dhritarashtra, take notice, Kurus, he will be the end of this house. Do not prefer the opinion of children who are untaught, Lord. Now, here's what is happening. She is against taking into account the opinion of children that have remained untaught. Okay, what does untaught means? Basically means that जो जिन्होंने जिन्होंने कुछ सीखा नहीं है, who hasn't learned the way of life, who hasn't learned to live by dharma, who hasn't learned to live by moral code. So here untaught basically means who is basically somebody who is not a moral person, somebody who has not learned how to live with the right ideas of dharma. So he says that Duryodhan is somebody who is untaught, who has not learned anything, who doesn't know how to live with dharma. And here, because the fact that Gandhari is critical about her own son, she knows that there's a problem in her son. This shows that Gandhari is more aware of what is happening, and the king is just blinded by the love for his son. Okay, while Gandhari here shows reason. Okay, so now it can be read as the story of a single human emotion. So you can see the whole scene. Why did Dhritarashtra allow the second instance of dicing? This whole instance can be seen as the consequence of as a consequence of such a love that gives precedence to attachment over duty and law. Okay, so yes, it's important that Dhritarashtra is a father, and there are certain duties of a father. Remember how we talked about the idea of dharma, as in what is your dharma is defined by what is your position. Are you a king? Are you a minister? So it's defined by your public position, okay, or your social position, and it is also defined by your relationships, like what is your dharma as a son, what is your dharma as a father, what is your dharma as a mother, what is your dharma as a child. Okay, so here now Dhritarashtra has two dharmas. He has a dharma towards his son of being a good father, of taking care of the son. At the same time, he also has the dharma of the king. What is the right way of the king? The king has to be just. He has to treat his king. He has to think about his kingdom. He has to prioritize his kingdom over everything else. So in this point, he chooses his love as a father over his duty, over his dharma as a king. Okay, so and ultimately, so the decision of having another dicing match is basically comes down to basically Dhritarashtra putting his duty as a father before his duty or his laws as her king. Okay, now uh, now the importance of loyalty and dharma we are going to talk about, and then now we talk about dharma in the character of Yudhishthir. How does this become important? Okay, one more thing, people, before I keep continuing. I am going to, so we have two units, right, for this class. So we are doing the sequel to dicing, and the next one is temptation of karma. So what I'm going to do is I am going to finish the first section, and then if we have some time left, if you have any questions, just type them in the chat. All right, and then we can, then I will just, they have to be questions relevant to this text. Don't ask me ma'am ye kaun sa course hai and whatever. Okay, so just ask me something which is relevant to the text, and you have to ask me with your names. If I see anonymous questions, I will not reply. So use your names if you want to ask me something. Anonymous questions will not be responded to. Okay. And another thing is and then in the next hour from 11 to 12, I will do the second part, and if there is time left, again I can take up questions. So meanwhile, you can keep typing the questions if you have any in the Q&A using your actual names, not posting as anonymous. All right, now the importance of loyalty and dharma. Why did Yudhishthir agree to go back for the second game of dice when he knows well enough that he would lose again? So Yudhishthir को पता है कि वो दोबारा से कि वो definitely दोबारा हारेगा. Shakuni says, why, but he still goes back. And why does he go back? And here Yudhishthir says, although I may know that the challenge of the dicing and the old man's beset will bring ruin, I cannot disobey his word. He knows, even though Yudhishthir knows that if he goes back again for another match, it will bring doom. It will result in something bad, and yet he cannot refuse it. He cannot refuse it because it is his dharma as a kshatriya that he cannot disobey. That he cannot disobey the word of somebody who's elder than him or the word of a king, right? So he must obey the dharma. Okay, so the notion of dharma attached to the idea of obeying the king is also at work here. Okay, this is what he says. And then he says, as he says, how indeed could a king like me, who guards his own law, fail to return when summoned? So he's saying that, it's my dharma, even as, firstly, my dharma is that as a younger person, that I must listen to an older man's request to come to go back. Second, it's my dharma as a king that I must obey when another king calls me. Okay, so I have italicized it because it's a quote from the book, and there is an assertion in Yudhishthir's space, a king like me. So this points towards Yudhishthir's essential character. When he says a king like me, he's basically saying that I am a type of a king who follows the law, who follows dharma. And at times you see the word law and dharma replaced, but understand that in the text, like in the English translation of the text that you have, dharma has been translated into law, but dharma means a lot of things. Dharma means duty, dignity. It means a whole different bunch of things, which I already talked about in the last class. Okay. Now, it points towards Yudhishthira's essential character, that he is always a law abiding king. That for him dharma is the point of his existence. Like without dharma you cannot live, and that is also the whole point of Mahabharata, that living a life without dharma is not a life, that you must live a life with dharma. Okay, so now also think about this question: is Yudhishthira really bound by law? Is he really trapped? Is he really trapped by law? Okay, the related idea of being bound by oath is another significant motive. Okay, the idea of being bound by a promise that you made, or you give a word, or you being bound by dharma. That's something which is very important, that you cannot break your dharma, or an oath is basically a promise, that you cannot break a promise. Of course, Yudhishthira did not. Here the point is not really a promise. Like Yudhishthira did not promise Dhritarashtra that he will listen to whatever Dhritarashtra says. Here the idea is basically obeying another king's order. But at the same time, I also want to slightly touch upon the idea of how in the Mahabharata, if you promise somebody something, you do not break the promise. Okay, for example, in the temptation of Karna is bound by oath, has promised Duryodhan his loyalty, so he does not want to break it. Similarly, Bhishma Pitama, he also had taken the oath, that shapat, basically. Okay, that's what oath means. He's taken a shapat that he's not going to marry, and Bhishma Pitama never marries, right? And he will not marry, and he will not become a king, and which Bhishma he never does. So he stays by his oath. So the oath taken then assumes a sacred attribute. And characters are unserving in their resolve in the Mahabharata. Basically, meaning that when you take an oath, when you take a shapat, you must follow it. In the Mahabharata, whether a person is bad or good, because if you've taken an oath, you follow it. Okay. So that's the idea of basically loyalty. That's the idea. That's where the idea of loyalty. If you take a shapat to protect somebody, if you take a shapat to support somebody, then you don't break it, and that's the idea of loyalty here. Okay. Now, in the second game of dicing, so Vyashampana, remember in the last class I told you about how Ved Vyasa was the one who wrote the Mahabharata, but there are different narrators. There are different narrators in the in the text. Okay, so sorry, there are different narrators who are telling different parts of the story. So here, Vyashampana, who's sort of narrating this part of the story, he says, they sat down at their ease to resume the dicing, crushed down by fate for the destruction of the entire world. Now, these are very powerful words. They say that this game of dicing will bring the destruction of the entire world. Of course, here when we talk about the entire world, we're talking about the world in Mahabharata. We're talking about Kurukshetra. We're talking about Hastinapur and Indraprastha. So he says that. Basically, he said that what will happen in this game, what will be the result of this game of dicing, will ultimately lead to the destruction of the entire world. Okay, which means that it will lead to war. Okay, the active agency of fate. The active agency of fate means here it is fate which dominates what will happen, and it is the complete submission of human beings. So here, if in the fate, or if it was already decided that the Kauravas and the Pandavas will have a war. If that's in the fate, then we see that this dicing sequence ultimately sort of establishes that how human beings have no power against changing fate. Had Yudhishthir said that okay, I will not come back for another game. Okay, so maybe this whole thing could have been avoided, but because Yudhishthir must follow his dharma, so he comes. So it basically shows that it is ultimately fate which completely overpowers the human beings. Okay, uh, then Yudhishthir says, compelled by his shame and his love for law, again had to go to the game. So here, Yudhishthir, even though he knows that this game will not lead to something good, he still goes because he must follow the dharma. So Yudhishthir is basically trapped, is bound by dharma, and he cannot make his free choice, his individual, his personal choice, his personal opinion that I will not play this game. So here his free choice is individual, his agency. By agency I mean his ability to act. His ability to act as an individual is is not possible, is sort of hindered because the law here is about, because the law here is basically because he must follow the law, and he says that I can't do anything, and he doesn't use his ability to say no. Okay, now the Shashana. So now when all of this has happened and the Yudhishthira has lost the game, the Shashana tells Draupadi to abandon the Pandavas and choose a man of wealth. So he says, having seen the fine-clad reduced to deer skins, penniless, homeless, in the woods, what joy shall you find, Yajnaseni? Now choose a husband who pleasures you, for all the Kurus are here assembled, forbearing and masterful and quite rich. Choose one of them to be your husband. This turn of the tide should not distress you. So the Shashana, he's basically a very he's just an evil, bad character, and there's nothing much to say about the Shashana. And he says that द्रौपदी तुम क्यों जा रही हो इनके साथ, ये तो अब गरीब हो गए हैं, इनके साथ मत जाओ, इनके साथ फॉरेस्ट में मत जाओ, यहीं पे रुक जाओ and you marry one of us because we have a lot of wealth, a lot of power, and so on and so forth. ठीक है, that's what he says. Now and then he also says that and the fact that he keeps taunting Draupadi, it means that he is attracted to her. Okay, like remember, it is also, yes, it's Duryodhana who orders that Draupadi should be disrobed, that uska cheer hua, but it is ultimately Dushashana who does it, right? Like Dushashana was pulling her sari. So this shows that he's continuously interested in her, and interest in what way? Of course, it is a type of sexual interest. Okay, and it is also a way of divesting the authority of the Pandavas. So first he tells Draupadi that don't go, just stay here, don't leave. And this is because he's interested in Draupadi, he is sexually attracted to her. Another reason for saying that Draupadi don't go, like if Draupadi had decided to not go with Pandavas and stay with the Kauravas, then it would be a huge insult to the Pandavas. It would be a huge insult for the manhood for the Pandavas कि उनकी wife ने उनको छोड़ दिया. Okay, so that's the another reason. Then the Shashana also calls the Pandavas that they are barren barley. Okay, fruitless like barren sesame seeds. Okay, now this is a metaphor. This basically means that the Pandavas are impotent. Okay, and by impotent meaning that they do not have the ability to have more. They do not have the ability to have children. Okay, so this is based, of course that's not true, but he's basically insulting like calling a man impotent is extremely insulting, just like saying that just like trying to say that his wife, the Draupadi, should leave, then that's also very insulting. And so he says that they are impotent, and similarly, and that's also the reason why they should not be owners of a kingdom and wealth. Okay, now here Bhim gets very angry. He says that I shall make you remember your words when I hurt you in battle. Okay, Bhim gets very angry, but even then Bhim does not attack him because he has to follow the dharma. You cannot attack somebody because the Shashana is, because they have lost and they have no right to attack him, so he does not attack him. He's still following the dharma. Okay, now we are reminded time and again in the text that law and righteousness is supreme for the Pandu brothers. Okay, while the counterparts, Duryodhana and his tribe, as in the Kauravas, they work with cunning and deceit. So everything Pandavas do, they do it righteously, like they follow dharma, while whatever Duryodhan does, it's always by by trickery or by cunning or by deceit. Okay. Now here, so when finally when the Pandavas, when they depart, when they leave, Narada, Narad Muni, and he appears, and he is a divine seer. Divine seer basically means somebody who can see in the future. Okay, he appears and he says, and he makes this big, very important statement. He says that 13 years from now, the Kaurava who are here will perish. The Kaurava who are here will perish through Duryodhana's guilt and Bhishma and Arjuna's might. Okay. So he says, so he makes this big declaration after the whole scene ends and the Pandavas leave for the forest. He says that, after 13 years, Sare Kaurav will be destroyed because of Bhim and Arjun's strength. Okay. And after saying this, Narad disappears. And in this way, this seals the fate of Kauravas. The fact that Narad Muni is technically, a kind of a god, and because he can also see the future, the fact that he makes this declaration, the seal, the fate of the Kauravas is sealed. Okay, they now know that they know that this is exactly what's going to happen. And why is it so sure? Because Pandavas are not Pandavas are a bit like demigod figures, or you can say superhuman figures, meaning that they are not gods, but they also have some superpowers. They have some godly powers which normal human beings don't have. Okay, so they are like demigods. So the word would be demigods or semi-god figures. Okay, so they are humans because they are bound to earth. They're not, even though they might have some godly powers, they are still human because they are still earthbound, meaning that they can get killed. They are mortals, and also they have, and of course they have certain weaknesses. For example, Yudhishthir, being a man of dharma, he's still addicted to gambling, right? Now, next we come to the scene of now, the Pandavas have left the court. They have left the court of the Dhritarashtra, and now they are getting ready to depart in the forest. Okay, so the Pandu brothers, they have lost the game, and now they are getting ready to go and live in the forest for 12 years like ordinary people. Okay, now Vidura speaks to them. Vidur is basically the third brother, Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidur. Vidur speaks to them, and he basically tries to pacify them. He tries to tell them that itna bura nahi hoga, and so what does he say? He says that he tries to remind them that even in the past they had lived and done a lot of things. They have lived in many places, and life has been full of adventures. Okay, so he says that the knowledge of the Pandavas that they have acquired, that they have gained by living in diverse regions outside the kingdom, away from the comforts of home, something which Duryodhana and the Kauravas have never obtained. Okay, so knowledge thus comes to the Pandavas from different sources. So what he's saying is that he's basically trying to make the best of the situation, so what is he saying? He's saying that he's reminding the Pandavas, and he's telling them that, do you remember that, all of you, all the Pandava brothers, you have not always lived in the kingdom. You have lived in different parts of the world. You have lived in different parts of Bharata, and you have done so all of that, all of that living and traveling in different places, there are different ways of and you've learned a lot from them, so that you have acquired knowledge from all these different sources which Duryodhan doesn't have. Okay, and he says that and he says that even now, this exile where you live in the forest, it will be an opportunity to learn more things. And he says that it will also be, and by living like common people, by not living as princes and kings and whatever, by living like common people, it will also humanize them, meaning that they will also, by living like common people, they will understand the common people better. They will understand how common people are. Okay, so it will humanize them. Okay, and at the same time, by living in the forest, the idea is that they will stay close to nature. The idea of being close to nature is also very important in ancient literature, because nature is seen as a place of harmony, as a place of peace. So by staying, and we see the court or a kingdom or a palace as a place where there's conflict and where there's war, because it's people who are fighting, while opposite to it, the idea of a forest is seen as a place of safety. It's a place of harmony, and so on and so forth. So by staying in the forest, there says that they will also be in a position of harmony. And the idea of forest versus city and so on and so forth, you will also be studying this in your Kalidasa class. Okay. Now, uh, continuing this, however, as the Pandavas depart for the forest, they project their will, right? So even though Vidur says all these things that see this as a learning opportunity, you will be close to nature and so on and so forth. The Pandavas, as they depart for the forest, they project their will, and at this point they are extremely angry, and it is very much in contrast to their actions. Okay, so when they lose the game, which they already knew that they are going to lose, they did not think that they will win the game. So when they lose the game, they decide that, okay, you know what, I will fine, we have lost the game. So they're very dignified. They don't get angry, they don't cry. They said, okay, we have lost, we will leave. Okay. But now that when they are leaving, they are extreme, they show a lot of anger. Okay, they show a lot of anger. So they proceed on the journey and they show anger in various ways, and they're not at all submissive. Okay. So Vidura, and then Vidur, because he sort of sees the whole scene, he goes and tells Dhritarashtra that Yudhishthir had covered his face with the shawl, and he says that because although Yudhishthir is consumed by fury over the trickery, he refuses to cast his evil eye. So because Yudhishthir is still, he does not want, because he's so angry, he does not want to cast an evil eye, nazar na lage unko. He doesn't want to cast an evil eye. That's why he hides his face with a shawl. Okay. And Yudhishthir himself says that, lest I burn these folks down to the ground if I look at them with my evil eye. That's why he covers his face with the shawl. Okay. And the fact that Yudhishthir is so angry, it is extremely telling that how humiliated and how upset the Pandavas are, because Yudhishthir is actually, as you know, is a very calm, is a very collected character. And the fact that in this scene, it's a very rare scene where you see Yudhishthir who is so angry. Okay. And he says that he's so angry that his gaze can completely burn the enemy down, and therefore he's covering his face with the shawl. Right. Now, the dicing sequence. Now, what happens really in the dicing sequence? It's basically, I'm just summing. I'm just sort of like, now I'm going to touch upon the idea of Draupadi, because we of course talked about Draupadi. So, in the dicing sequence, we saw that Draupadi was dragged into the main hall, jahan pe dicing ka game khela ja raha tha, and she was just wearing a sari, and the sari had blood stains on it because she was menstruating. Okay, because she had her periods, and now she's still in the same sari when she leaves for the exile. Okay. And she is so humiliated and she's so angry that she says, they, because of whom I got this way, 13 years from now, because the idea is that they will be in exile for 13 years. 13 years from now, their wives will have their husbands dead, their sons dead, their kingsmen and their friends dead. Okay. So Draupadi, what Draupadi is doing is that she is not basically cursing the men. She is now turning her curses to the women. So it's basically now turning into a woman to woman attack. Okay, she refers to the wives of Kauravas, and she says that they will see their husbands dead, and some of them will even see their sons dead, because many of the Kauravas are sons as well who will fight in the war. So there is a shift in focus or foci as Draupadi speaks of the suffering of women in battle. Okay, so another interesting aspect when she says that I curse the women of the Kaurava women, that they will lose their husbands and then they will lose their sons. She touches upon the idea of the suffering of women, because usually when we read epics, it's all about men fighting and men killing each other and men coming victorious. But here we usually don't think about the women who don't fight the war and who suffer, who lose their love, who lose their husbands and their sons, right? So here she sort of brings forward the idea of the suffering of women. And here the scope of rivalries, like it's no longer the rivalry between two cousin family brothers. Okay, it's no longer that. Here now the rivalry also sort of increases, sort of goes to the children and to the wives and to friends and their allies. Okay, so also when Draupadi says that these women's bodies, like in 13 years, the Kaurava women's bodies will be covered in blood of their loved ones. So this is actually in response or in revenge to the fact that she was shamed while she was menstruating, and everybody saw her menstruating blood. So in revenge, what's going to happen is now these Kaurava women will be covered in blood of their husbands and sons. Okay, now Draupadi's important presence in this room broadens the scene of animosity. Like, so the, as I said, this now it's no longer a rivalry between two sets of brothers, but the idea is now basically a confrontation and destruction of an entire clan and a civilization. Okay. Now, um, we are almost done with this section. Now, interestingly, what happens is that when all the town people, when they see that the Pandavas are leaving the town, leaving the forest, and so on and so forth, they are upset and they cry. They don't want the Pandavas to leave. It's very similar to how, in the Ramayana, when Ram is leaving for his exile, and the people of Ayodhya come and they cry and everything. And that is, if that is not enough, what we see is that there is a lot of the cry of the common people is accompanied by the fury of nature. Like, even we see that even the nature is angry, the nature is upset. And what do I mean by that? So he says that when the Pandavas are leaving, Vidura tells Dhritarashtra that when these superior men in this fashion departed from the city of elephant means Hastinapura. Hastinapura means the city of elephant. Lightning flashed on the cloudless sky and the earth trembled. We are made to understand that the nature too rebels against this act and joins the Pandavas in this act. So this is a very common idea that when something bad happens in the human world, when something unfair, something immoral, unjust, when something like that happens in the human world, it is also reflected in nature. Even nature responds to it. Okay, so the bijli kadak rahi hai or bhukamp aa raha hai, that is the response. That is the response of nature against the evil, against the unjust treatment of the Pandavas. Okay. He also then, Vidur also says, Rahu swallowed the sun when no eclipse was due. So there was a sudden eclipse, and there was a meteor shower. Meteors exploded, wind machines. Again, this fosters the idea that bhukamp aa raha hai, eclipse ho raha hai, meteor shower ho raha hai. It eclipses the idea that the nature is upset and the nature is showing it, and the fact that the Pandavas have to go to a forest is nothing smaller than a natural calamity. Okay. And not just that, beasts of prey basically means carnivores, animals or something, roar forth with vultures, jackals, and crows around the temples and sanctuaries of gods and the watchtowers of the palaces. And when we talk about vultures and jackals and crows, these are all symbols of bad omens. Okay, bad omens. And so when all of these people, and they come near the temple and they come near the palace, these are all signs of ill omens and bad omens, and it sort of indicates that something very bad is going to happen in the future. Okay. Vidura thus speaks of the various portents that loom large over the future of Kauravas who are on their path of destruction. So the Bhukamp, and so firstly, the people of Hastinapura are very sad that Pandavas are leaving. Secondly, there's a Bhukamp, and there's an eclipse, and there's Chandragrahan or whatever, and that all indicates that the nature is angry, and the nature is upset. And also then we have ill omens like the crows and the jackals and the vultures, and all of this indicate that something very bad is going to happen to the Kauravas in the future. All right. So here I end the first unit. I am now just going to look. So we have done 16 slides. We still have another 15 slides left. So actually more than 15 slides, but it's fine. We will finish it. That's not a problem. I am just going to quickly look at your there are 197 comments, so I will just quickly go through some of them if there are any questions. PPT visible? Yes, ma'am, it's visible. Good morning, PPT. If you don't have any doubts, you can just go and take a 2-3 minute break and then come back, okay? Because I am just looking at the comments now to see if there are any questions, and then again at around 11, in like another 3-4 minutes, I will start the second section. Oh, Bhavisha, can I see? I cannot zoom it because unfortunately, if I do, then the system it will stop sharing the PPT altogether. So there is a problem with that. So unfortunately, that is the issue. But I will send you the PPT. I will send it to one of you, and then they will forward it to you. Okay. Yes, you have to do you have to purchase a book of, yes, of course you have to purchase a book. Like how else will you study? You need the book. The name of the book is called Mahabharata, okay? And it is by J.A.B. Buchanan. So just go to any university bookstore and say ki first year ki Mahabharata English honors ki book chahiye. They know which one to give you. The Sol material which you find is enough, and also what I'm teaching you here is also enough. Okay, I'm just reading. I did not mention any WhatsApp group. Somebody said that I know. I'm not in any WhatsApp group actually. Okay. I'm finally seeing some questions. Ma'am, can we say that Dhritarashtra was influenced by his surroundings and did not think the situation through? Yes, you can say that. He was influenced by Duryodhan mainly. Should I go to the good morning, ma'am? This is Reshma's question. Ma'am, is still this part of story? It was in Duryodhan's mind. Basically, he was presuming every negative thought against Pandavas, which is not actually done by Pandavas against Duryodhan. But earlier part you said Pandavas. Yes, so yes, see the Pandavas and Kauravas, they always had like they were not exactly friends or anything like that. Okay, but at the same time, you have to understand that that they are not that they were not going to kill each other. Like एक दूसरे के साथ झगड़ा करना, like बिकर करना, अपने जैसे भाई बहन के साथ आप बिकर करते हो, that's not the same as you trying to kill them. Like they made fun of Duryodhan, but that did not mean that they wanted to take everything away from Duryodhan. Okay, so Reshma is asking, Gandhari is rational but unable to stop her son. Why? Because Gandhari does not have the power. It is the king, the Dhritarashtra, who has all the power, right? I don't take attendance. All my attendance नहीं होती है. तो अगर आप attendance के लिए आ रहे हो तो फिर आपको आने की. The three boon of Draupadi, three boon was like it was up to Draupadi. She could decide whatever she wanted, and she only used two boons to free Yudhishthira and to free the rest of her husbands. I don't know कि मैंने कितने questions देखे हैं, but I have to start again. Okay. Some of the questions here, कि Kaurava ने क्यों dicing game खेला, I will not repeat because I said it in the last class and we don't have the time. Yeah, Taposh, that's a good question. So what he is asking is, does Dhritarashtra's actions reveal that he was not fit to be a good king in the first place? Yes, it was. That's a good question. And in fact, because Dhritarashtra was blind, the kingdom was actually ruled by Pandu. Even though Dhritarashtra was the older son and he should have been the king, the kingdom was actually ruled by Pandu. But then Pandu decided to give up his kingdom, and he goes away, and so Dhritarashtra then ultimately becomes the king. And yes, he is not a good king because he gets very easily convinced by his manipulative son, right? So you don't need to. Okay, people, I'm seeing the same question and over again. You don't need to buy anything else. Please do not buy guides because they do not have good answers. They're written very badly. Guides मत खरीदिए, वहाँ पे ढंग से आंसर्स आपको नहीं मिलेंगे. आपके पास जो सॉल्व का मटेरियल है वो पढ़िए, that's enough. आप ये PPTs भी पढ़ सकते हैं. These will be shared to you with you. And जो आपकी जो book है वो आप ऐसे गूगल करके कोई भी महाभारत मत खरीदिए. आप किसी भी बुक स्टोर पे जाइए जहाँ पे यूनिवर्सिटी की बुक्स मिलती हैं, ठीक है, एंड ask them that I want मुझे इंग्लिश ऑनर्स फर्स्ट ईयर की महाभारत की बुक चाहिए, and they will give it to you because उसकी एक अलग से बहुत स्पेसिफिक बुक आती है, तो आपको वही लेनी. Why is it always important as a king to obey other king's decision? This is because it's the Kshatriya code of Dharma. That's the code. Okay. No. Yudhishthir has to accept the challenge again because in the end of the last scene, what happens is what's his name? Dhritarashtra gives everything back to them, so they get everything back, and then they again lose it. So when he gets challenged again, he can accept it because he becomes a king again. Okay, because they give the kingdom back to him, right? Okay, guys, I will not be able to go through all of them because they're just a lot of questions. And Srishti, very good question. Wasn't calling back the Pandavas the best option then for the Kauravas since Bhim has vowed? Yes, it was. It's up. See, this is literature, and you can interpret it in whatever way you really like. Okay, so if you think that what they did, that they called them back for another game of dice, was a good decision because they wanted to make sure, because it was very likely that the Pandavas would come and kill them. You can very easily do that. Like that's not an issue. just give me आनंद सर मेरी 2 घंटे की क्लास है, ठीक है, अभी 1 घंटा ही हुआ है. Yeah, so this is the issue. Now, what is the meaning of the word dharma? The meaning of the word dharma basically means law, but it can also mean your duty. It can mean the law and it also means your duty. Okay. Exactly. Very good question, Stuti. Ma'am, is this a dharma to put your wife or brothers as a wealth or a king or a thing in the... Absolutely, you're right. So there is a lot of hypocrisy. Like, on one hand, this just says that I am a very dharmic man. I do everything according to the dharma. So how is it okay? How is it right that you put yourself, your brothers, and your wife as stake? And this is something which even Draupadi questions, that I'm not your property. How can you stake me? Like, how do you think you own me? How can you do this, right? So even, like, I don't know if you were in the last class, but we talked about this in the last class, that Draupadi actually raises the question that just because I'm your wife does not mean that you can just take me like this. Like, what kind of a man are you? What kind of a king are you? So yes, it's very true that Yudhishthir, while he follows all these dharma codes, why he still does this. So very good question, Stuti. Yes, can you bring, we can say dharma brings a lot of foundation along good things. Yes, Reshma, that you can do that. How can we also... Yes, again, Aryan's question, what dharma says that you can listen to taunt against his wife? Exactly. There's no... The idea here is that, yes, in one dharma you have to protect your wife. You have to as a husband, your job is as a dharma, your dharma is to protect your wife, but at the same time your dharma is that if you lose a game you have to accept the consequences. So which dharma is more important, Aryan? That's the question, really. Okay, guys, I know now there are 300 questions. I know there are just way too many people. I am just so sorry that I cannot answer each and every one of you. If you have any pressing questions about what I'm teaching you now, जो अभी जो पढ़ाया जा रहा है ना, उसके बारे में क्वेश्चंस पूछिए प्लीज. अगर आप मुझे व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप के बारे में क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हैं, अगर आप मुझे एग्जाम पेपर के बारे में क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हैं, आई कैन नॉट आंसर दैट बिकॉज वी हैव वेरी लिमिटेड टाइम एंड आई हैव टू फिनिश दिस सिलेबस. सो यू कैन सेंड मी अ प्राइवेट मैसेज इफ यू वांट. लाइक आपके पास, यू कैन सी माय आईडी हियर, राइट? यू कैन कांटेक्ट मी एंड देन जस्ट सेंड मी. देन उसके बाद आप मुझे क्या कहते हैं, लाइक आई विल रिस्पॉन्ड टू व्हाटएवर. इफ इट्स अ वैलिड क्वेश्चन आई विल रिप्लाई टू यू. ठीक है? Now, continuing this, the second section, the final unit which we have is the character of Karna and his specific predicament. Okay, what is now here we will talk about Karna's character, कि वो कैसा है, क्यों है, whatever, and finally उसका and we will talk about this one very important decision which that we make. Okay, so in the invitation of Karna, in this scene, Karna's it is revealed that Krishna, in this scene, what happens is that Krishna, and this is happening much later. Okay, this is happening like right before the war, the Kurukshetra war. Okay, so here Krishna comes and he tells Karna that Karna, you are actually born. Your actual parents are Kunti. Okay, he says that he tells the secret of his birth. He says that ये तुम्हारी असली माँ है and whatever. Okay, now Karna is Pandu's son. Now this is not exactly true. He is Kunti's son and she was born to Kunti. Sorry, he was born to Kunti. Kunti gave birth to him before she married Pandu. Okay. Now, again, according to the law, according to the law in Mahabharata, or according to Dharma in Mahabharata, if an unmarried woman has a child and then she marries somebody, then even that child becomes the son of the husband she marries. Okay, of the man she marries. So in this way, Karna also automatically becomes Kunti's son. Okay, I know this is a very, very strange logic, but this is the case. So Kunti basically क्या होता है कि Kunti becomes a mother before she is married to Pandu, and she has Karna, and now and technically now Karna also becomes Pandu's son because Pandu is now the husband of Kunti. Okay, so Krishna, but of course he was never acknowledged as her son. Like Kunti usko chhod ke aa जाती है. Now Krishna usko आके proposal देता है. He says that in this war you should join the Pandavas. Like Pandavas की तरफ से लड़ो, and अगर और जब Pandavas जीत जाएंगे, then I will make you the king. Okay, now because he is first born, because जो हमेशा सबसे बड़ा होता है वो king बनता है ना, and because he is first born, because he was born even before Yudhishthir was born, right? So he will be recognized by everyone as the rightful king, of Hastinapur. And now this is exactly what Karna wanted all his life. He wanted his position as a Kshatriya. He wanted his position to be cemented as a Kshatriya. He wanted that everybody recognizes him as a Kshatriya. He wanted to have his rightful place. He wanted to have the rightful place in the power structure. But वो हुआ नहीं, because Kunti did not acknowledge him as a son. Kunti उसको छोड़ देती है जब वो एकदम बच्चा होता है. Okay, so now with one stroke, if he would agree, he would get both what he agrees. Meaning that if Karna agrees to what Krishna is offering, that you fight with the Pandavas and you will become the king. And so if he becomes the king, first he becomes the king, जो उसको चाहिए, उसको power चाहिए, ठीक है, सबको power चाहिए basically, ठीक है, he becomes the king. And secondly, the fact that he would be recognized as a Kshatriya, which he always wanted. Okay, so the two things which in his life that he wanted, he is getting it. So Krishna is offering it to him. Okay, so the objective of this unit, like this chapter here, is basically to tell you, is basically to see what is the psychological state of mind in Karna. Okay, and the social environment. Like, so we are seeing two things. We are seeing कि Karna के दिमाग में क्या चल रहा है, how does Karna think, what kind of person he is, and the second thing we also see is the social environment, basically कि उस time पे society कैसी थी and how does that affect Karna's way of thinking. Okay, just give me a second. I hope that this is not one of you who is messaging me, because I cannot reply to any of you. Okay, so if somebody is messaging me, I don't know how you got my number, but please do not message me on my private number. This is not allowed. All right, I don't know आपको कहाँ से मिली, but मुझे ऐसे messages मत भेजिएगा. Okay, so and it's also extremely distracting that you're messaging me while I'm in a classroom. Like, I have to check my phone because हमें सॉल की तरफ से बहुत messages आते हैं हमारे professors से, और we have to coordinate with the IT team and everything. Please don't do this. Okay, you're wasting time. Now, the play of narrative within narrative. So आपने ये चीज notice करी होगी, and you might have all seen this, that in Mahabharata a lot of things are told कि उसने जाके उसको बताया, and that's how we find the story. Okay, so the story of exactly Krishna ने क्या बात करी Karna से is actually told by Sanjay to Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra Sanjay से पूछता है, Sanjay is one of his quotes-men, and he asked him कि what happened, tell me कि Krishna ने क्या बोला Karna का, and it is Sanjay who narrates the story कि क्या हुआ वहाँ पे. Okay, so and Sanjay is also somebody who has the vision, who can also see the future, and who can also see what is happening. Okay, and what happens is when Krishna makes this very tempting proposal, that's why the book is called the Temptation of Karna. He makes this very tempting proposal, but Karna turns it down. He says that he cannot accept this because he is loyal to Duryodhan. Okay, and then he narrates this this dream. Karna narrates this dream to Krishna. He says that in the dream he sees that the Pandavas have fallen, like the Pandavas have been defeated, and the Kauravas have been defeated, and the Pandavas have won. Okay, and he projects this war as a great sacrifice, okay, where the unjust Kauravas are bound to be annihilated, and he along with him. Okay, and here what is interesting is that he says that Karna says that I had this dream where I saw that the Kauravas have all died. Okay, and he sees that even he has died. So and even though he has this dream, he still doesn't change sides. He still doesn't go and fight for the Pandavas because he's loyal, because he has this oath. Remember his shapath to Duryodhana. He doesn't want to leave him, and for this very reason, he's willing to sacrifice himself. He's willing to say, yes, I know that even the Kauravas will lose, I will still fight for them, as I will sacrifice myself because I have this oath Duryodhan. Okay. Now there are other multiple interpretations of why does Karna refuse the offer of Krishna, and we will come back to it slowly. Okay. Now, apart from this, apart from this part where Krishna tries to influence Karna's decision, Kunti also goes and talks to Karna. Okay. And here Kunti says that, I have this is the truth, and my son has this is the truth. You are my son, so please please join the Pandavas and please fight for them. And during this time, even the sun god, because Karna is actually born his father is the sun god. Okay, so sun god comes and he says that Karna, you must listen to your mother. Even his father, so basically Karna is half human, half god, right? So but that also means that he can be killed. It doesn't mean that he cannot be killed. His father comes and he says from the skies that Karna, you must listen to your mother. And so Surya Devta comes and he must listen to your mother. But even then, even though his godly father is telling him that he must join the Pandavas, he still doesn't listen. So for him, his promise, his oath, his shapath to Duryodhan is more important than anything else. Okay, however, he does promise Kunti that वो उसके और किसी लड़कों को नहीं मारेगी, and he will only नहीं मारेगा, and he will only kill Arjun in a battle, not in any other case. Okay, now we are going to now try to understand the character of Karna. Okay, now ever since the first time he appears in Mahabharata, right, from the very beginning, he tries to show that he's a strong person. He has power, he has valor, he has courage, and he tries to do this because he wants to challenge. He challenges Arjun. He comes and he challenges Arjun because he wants to because everybody says that Arjun is so brave and so skillful, and he wants to show that no, he is just as skillful as Arjun, or in fact maybe even more. Okay, and he's also aware that he's a Kshatriya, but he has been denied the rights of a Kshatriya, right? And this makes him very angry and very bitter. Okay, because how caste hierarchy works, right? It's always the Kshatriyas who have the right to battle, who have the right to war, and so on and so forth. If you're a different class, you don't do this. Like you can only be a warrior if you're a Kshatriya, and because he was not accepted by Kunti, because he was not given the title of a Kshatriya, because he was an illegitimate child. He's always very bitter and angry. Okay, so this is what he says. He says, "Born a Kshatriya, I have yet not received the respect due a baron. What enemy could have done me greater harm than you, Kunti, have?" Okay, now Karna had acquired the skills of the Kshatriyas. Okay, so basically, now here's something very interesting. So Karna has the skills, meaning that he knows how to be a warrior, he knows how to fight, he knows how to have a sort of, but he does not know the Kshatriya code of conduct. Okay, the Kshatriya code of conduct basically means जैसे कि युधिष्ठिर का जो पूरा concept है धर्मा का, जैसे अर्जुन और भीम का, the reason why they do not fight back when they lose the game. So Karna doesn't have the Kshatriya code of conduct because he was not raised a Kshatriya. Okay, but he does have the skills, like the physical skills of a Kshatriya. Like he's a good warrior. Okay, and from the beginning of the story, we are told that Karna and Duryodhan are very good friends, and Karna is very, very important for Duryodhan, and it is the only way Duryodhan can think of defeating the Pandavas is if Karna helps them. Okay, and they both are inseparable. They both are good friends. Okay, and however, Karna knows the difference between right and wrong. Okay, Duryodhan is just blindly following power. He just hates the Pandavas. He just wants to defeat them. He just wants to kill them. But here Karna actually knows that what Duryodhan is doing is wrong. However, he still continues to support Duryodhan because Duryodhan is his friend, and उसने Duryodhan को promise किया है कि वो Duryodhan को हमेशा support करेगा. Okay, so it's not that Karna thinks that Duryodhan is right. He knows Duryodhan is wrong, but he still continues to support Duryodhan. Okay, now now Krishna. Basically, Krishna praises Karna for being knowledgeable for the truth. So basically, Krishna उसको बहुत मस्का मारता है, बोलता है कि तुम सब कुछ पता है, तुम्हें वेदास पता है, तुम्हें तो sacred learnings पता है. Okay, and then he reveals, and ये सब बोल के बोलता है कि, and then he reveals to Karna that you were born to Kunti before marriage, and according to the law, you are also the son of Pandu. ठीक है, ये law है. मुझे से मत पूछो कि क्यों है, ये लॉ है, ठीक है. Now after revealing the truth about his birth, Krishna then tries to tempt Karna. Okay, he says that वो बोलता है कि if you become once you become, पहले तो बोलता है कि you will become the king because you are the oldest son and you will be recognized as the oldest son of Pandu and you will become the king. And he says that think of it like you will become the king and you will have all kinds of luxuries. Okay, he says that and he also says that once you once you become the king, you will have even Draupadi will come to you. Okay, so this is a very very problematic thing. He says that because द्रौपदी तो सब पांडव की वाइफ है ना, और जब तुम्हें भी पांडव का सर मान लेंगे तो द्रौपदी तुम्हारी भी वाइफ हो जाएगी basically. Okay, he's saying that so he's basically again the whole idea of in the last class we talked about how the women are basically seen as objects of pleasure for men. So here again Draupadi becomes an object ki हाँ चलो तुम भी ले लो द्रौपदी को, तुम्हें भी पसंद है तुम भी ले लो, अगर तुम बन गए अगर तुम भी king बन गए तुम्हें भी द्रौपदी मिल जाएगी. It's like that. Okay, so Krishna tells Karna that he needs to make a choice immediately. So बोलता है कि तुम्हें अभी decide करना पड़ेगा so that we can say that yes आप सबसे बड़े भाई हो, and in this manner like he tries to tempt Karna. Okay, he says that you will become the king, you will have all the luxuries, you will have all the riches, and even you will get Draupadi. Okay, now now Krishna, basically what does Krishna really say? We are still going into that. You Karna were born that way. Under the law you are the son of Pandu. Under the constraints of the book of law, come with me and you shall be king. Now this is a great moment of testing, because this is what Karna wanted all his life. He wanted people to recognize that he is a Kshatriya, और उसे finally वो चीज मिल रही है, right? And then Krishna further says that the 5 Pandava brothers shall clasp your feet as your brothers. The 5 Pandavas shall clasp your feet as their brothers. And he's saying that तुम सबसे बड़े भाई हो तो सारे बाकी सारे पांडवा भाई सारे आके तुम्हारा पैर छुएंगे, तुम्हारे पैर पे पड़ेंगे. And he's saying this because he knows, because Krishna knows that this is exactly what Karna wants. Karna wants the Pandavas to recognize him as the eldest brother. He wants them to respect him. Okay, so and this is exactly like he's saying the things which really Karna wants to hear. Okay, now Karna further draws a picture of wealth and plenitude, and he again then he says, baronesses and daughters of kings shall bring gold and silver and earthen vessels, herbs, all seeds, all gems and shrubs of your imagination, and at the 6th turn you shall lie with Draupadi. 6th turn matlab on the 6th year, because I don't know if you guys know this, but because she is married to all the 5 Pandavas, right? So every 1 year she spends with one brother. Okay, so 1 year Yudhishthira, 2nd year Bhim, and then again the circle starts. So he's saying that on the 6th year now you will get your chance, and you shall lie with Draupadi. Literally means that you will get to have sex with Draupadi. That's what he's saying. Okay, this is meant to further lure Karna, and so it's basically what he's trying to do is he's trying to use women as an enticing, he's trying to use Draupadi. He's trying to seduce Karna to move away from his promise, by showing Draupadi as some kind of a forbidden fruit which he can get. Okay, now despite his valor and strength, Karna never received recognition from the Brahmins, and it is now why Brahmins, because Brahmins are the highest caste, and he is extremely angry, and he says that like the fact that nobody recognizes him as a Kshatriya is what makes him really angry. And this is when again Krishna says that, oh don't worry, tum jab king ban jaoge to tumhe sab recognize karenge ki tum Kshatriya ho. So basically what Krishna is doing, Krishna ko exactly pata hai ki karna kya chahta hai aur use wahi suna raha hai. Okay, this is what he's doing. So now what really happens here is Karna now starts to share his negative feelings to Krishna. He says, yes Krishna, under the law I was born as son of Pandu, but Kunti cast me out as though I had been stillborn. So even now that he's a grown one, he's extremely upset and hurt by the fact that Kunti sort of rejected him. So what had happened was when Kunti had rejected him, the man called Adhirata, the Suta. Now Now keep this in mind that Suta does not mean Shudra caste. Okay, Shuta here means somebody who is a chariot driver. जो होता है ना, जब जब बॉल में जो रथ सवार करते हैं, तो रथ को जो चलाता है वो एक अलग से एक ग्रुप होती है, उसको बोलते हैं सूता. ठीक है. तो so he recounts that how Adhirata the Suta, जब जब कुंती ने उसको ऐसे छोड़ दिया था, तो अधिरता he took him home, और उसकी वाइफ, when his wife saw him, she automatically fell in love with the baby, that उसके breast से breast milk आने लगा, because okay, I don't know how much of biology but when women only produce breast milk when they actually have a baby, ऐसे ऐसे नहीं निकलता है. So the fact that her love for her was so immense that even though she was not the real mother, she was able to produce breast milk. Okay, and so he says that I cannot reject these people, so I cannot turn away from these people, because now I have an obligation to them. And what is this obligation he's talking about? The obligation here is basically that when your parents raise you, they take care of you when you're born, and when your parents die, like when in the old days when the parents die, then it is the son's right to then it is the son's job to do the last rites, right? It's the son's job who put the fire on the fire of the dead body, right? The antim sanskar jo kehte hain na. So that is done by the father. So he said that because usne mujhe apnaya, like because these people adopted me as their child, now I have an obligation to them to do their antim sanskar, okay, as their son. And therefore, but if I become a kshatriya, I cannot do it, which means that I'm rejecting them as my parents. If I accept being a Kshatriya, it means that I accept being a child of Kunti and Pandu, and I can't do that because these are my parents. So here, what Karna is basically doing is he's accepting his adopted parents over his biological parents. He's saying that my dharma, my duty towards my adopted parents is more important than my duty towards my these biological parents जिन्होंने मुझे छोड़ दिया. Okay. Now, again, this also shows the contrast, like Kunti being the actual mother, wo chhod deti hai usko at the fate, and while Radha, who is not his mother, actually accepts him. Okay, so the foster parents matlab the adoptive parents, they gave him a Suta identity. Okay, and when he had none, तो जब उसके पास कोई identity नहीं थी, तो उनको उसको एक Suta identity दी. And now जब उसका finally एक Kshatriya, like a better identity जब उसका emerge हुआ है, now if he says कि oh अब मैं Kshatriya हूँ, तो yes, he always wanted to be recognized as a Kshatriya, right? But at the same time, he now that he has a chance, he realizes that कि मुझे ये identity सूता identity मिली, और अगर मैं इसे give up कर दूं, तो it would mean that I am betraying the identity which was given to me, and I can't do that. Okay. Now, he says that it's my duty as a son towards Adhirata to love him because he loves me as a father. Okay. So his dharma, like uska jo dharma hai apne father ke towards, is that he must accept his Suta identity. Because Adhirata adopted him, now he sees Adhirata as his father, and because his father's identity is the Suta, he thinks that now it is his dharma that he must accept his Suta identity, his father's identity. Okay. And he also says that he cannot just simply be uprooted by, you can't just simply change somebody's identity. You can't suddenly make a Kshatriya, a Brahman, and you can't suddenly make a Suta, a Kshatriya. Okay. And then he goes on to rationalize the other relationship he has built over the years with Duryodhana. So this is one reason why he does not want to accept the reason, because he has this sense of duty towards his family, towards his adopted family. And the second reason is he says that while nobody accepted me as a Kshatriya or whatever, while nobody respected me, it was Duryodhana who befriended me, who took care of me. Okay, it was Duryodhana who accepted me into my home, and so on and so forth. So it is basically and this is what makes, because Duryodhana ne mera saath diya, to main usko nahi chhodunga. And this is the reason why Karna rejects the proposal. Okay, so his main reason for rejecting the proposal is of the debt he carries towards his foster parents and his friend benefactor Duryodhana. He owes them this debt, which ultimately leads himself to sacrifice himself. I'm saying sacrifice himself because usko pata hai ki he will die in the war if he fights for the Kauravas, and yet he chooses to sacrifice himself because he has to be loyal to Duryodhana. Okay, and because he has to be loyal to his Suta identity, because he sees he ultimately sees Adhirata and Radha as his actual parents and not Kunti and Suryadev. Okay. Now, even though and yes, as I already said that Karna is actually aware that if he keeps supporting Duryodhan, if he fights for Duryodhan, then it will lead to his downfall. He says the kings and princes who follow Duryodhan orders will journey to Yama's realm. Yama's realm matlab नर्क जाएंगे, ठीक है, burned by the fire of the weapons in the war. उसको पता है कि fighting with Duryodhan is not the right answer. And still he still doesn't join the Pandavas. He still gives up on his dreams of whatever he always wanted, to be the king, to have power, to be recognized as Kshatriya. He still gives it all up. And now that we can ask multiple questions like, do you think it is loyalty for Duryodhan, or is it just dharma? What is it? Is it loyalty for Duryodhan, which is the law that is stopping him? What is stopping him? Because he's loyal to Duryodhan. Yes, this is the reason he gives, that he is loyal to Duryodhan. Okay. However, he also thinks that agar usne accept kar liya Krishna ka offer, then it would mean that he's a coward, because usko already pata hai that he will die if he fights with Duryodhan, and agar usne accept kar liya to fight for Duryodhan, it means that he's a coward, and being a coward is something which people don't want to be. Like it's a huge shame. Like you should not be a coward. Chahe kuch bhi ho jao, but you should not be a coward. Okay. And here's the thing, right? So Karna is also aware. He's aware that Pandavas are right and the Kauravas are wrong, and still he decides to fight on the side of adharma. Okay. And why? Even though he knows that he is that he's fighting on the wrong side, why does he still do that? One reason is that he has to be loyal to Duryodhan. The other reason is that remember how in the last in the dicing sequence he insults Draupadi a lot, like he calls her a whore and so on and so forth. So he thinks that उसने भी तो करना ये सोच सकता है कि उसने भी बहुत बुरा किया है, and therefore like fighting for the Kauravas can be seen as his punishment, that he will fight for them and he will die because he has committed sins. So he chooses to fight for the Kauravas knowing that he would die, and this death would mean that this is a punishment for the sins he has committed. Okay. Now, we can say that we can say that if Karna had agreed to pardon. Now this is something very important. Now, why does Krishna really go to Karna? Krishna और किसी के पास नहीं जाता, वो कर्णा को जाता है कन्विंस करने के लिए. And this is not because he loves Karna, and not because Krishna को लगता है कि Pandavas Karna के बगैर नहीं जीतेंगे. Krishna does not think so. Krishna knows that Pandavas can win without Karna as well. So why does he go? Krishna basically goes to Karna because he does not want the war to happen. He does not want the war to take place. Okay, because he does, and this is one of the features of an epic, where gods intervene and they try to solve a situation. Okay, but even here अगर किस्मत में लिखा है कि war होगा तो होगा, gods भी उसे change नहीं कर सकते. Okay, so he goes and he says that and this is the reason why Krishna goes to Karna, because he knows that अगर Karna ने मना, it's not because he thinks that Karna is very powerful and Karna के बगैर पांडव नहीं जीत सकते. It is because he knows that Karna के बगैर Duryodhan will not fight the war. Duryodhan इतना strong नहीं है to fight the war. It is only because Karna fight कर रहा है, that's why Duryodhan is ready to fight the war. So अगर Karna वहाँ से चला जाए, अगर Karna उसके favor में ना fight करे, तो फिर war नहीं होगा. So therefore, the whole idea of taking Karna to Pandava side is basically to stop the war. Okay, it is not because they think that Pandava को चाहिए करना की बहुत जरूरत है, of course. Okay, so and when Karna decides that वो नहीं करेगा, वो नहीं join करेगा Pandavas, so it is of course an individual decision, but this individual decisions have a far-reaching consequences, meaning कि Karna के इस individual decision की वजह से ultimately the war happens. Okay, now what happens in Karna's dream? So जब Krishna उसे convince कर जाता है तो वो उसे एक dream सुनाता है. Okay, so in the dreams he sees that Yudhishthir and his brothers ascend to a 1,000-pillared palace, white turbans and white robes. They all had beautiful stools. So it basically symbolizes that they're sitting on big stools and they're in a big palace. It basically means that in the dream these people, like the Pandavas, are now the kings. Okay, and the idea of the color white is also a color of harmony and peace and justice. So it means that there's a new kingdom, and the kingdom will be built on harmony and peace and justice. Okay, and then he also says that, in my vision, I saw you drape the blood-fueled earth with entrails. A boundless August Yudhishthir mounted a pile of bones and joyous ate rice mixed with ghee from a gold platter. So there are two things happening in this scene. One thing is that, again, there's a reference to violence and death, the idea of blood-fueled earth with entrails, and which means that, while Krishna is one of the main agents, one of the main players in the war, who will bring violence and destruction as wars do, he's also saying that, just and the fact that, Yudhishthir is eating, that, we see a scene where Yudhishthir is eating rice and ghee, it symbolizes that after the war is over, the whole kingdom, we would move back to a kingdom where there's a lot of bounty, where there's plenty of food. So the white robes in his dream, the white robes and white turbans symbolize peace and harmony. In his dream, he sees Yudhishthir eating, which symbolizes that after the war, everything would, like, the kingdom would go back to peace, and there would be plentiful to eat, there would be plenty of food for everyone. Okay, these are just interpretations. Okay, of course, like now. He also says, Karna also says, I saw Yudhishthir swallow the earth which you had served him. Clearly, he shall enjoy enjoy the rule of the earth. So, what he's saying is that Karna has already, like, all these lines, they indicate that Karna already knows. Karna already knows that the Pandavas will win the war, and he has already accepted defeat, and yet he is going to keep fighting for Duryodhan. One, because he's Lord of Duryodhan. Second, because he knows that he has sinned, and therefore he deserves to die in the war. Okay. And then he says, where there is law, there is triumph. This is very important. Where there is law, this is again the whole line of where there is law, there is jahan pe dharm hai, wahan jaya hai. Okay, so this is the main idea, the main driving idea of Mahabharata. Where there is law, there is triumph. For all of you shall, about all, I have no doubts, slaughter all the kings led by Duryodhan in battle, Krishna. So here he says that, Karna says that, he's certain that everybody who will fight for Duryodhan will die. And he's wondering that why is it happening? Okay, is it the law? Is it because, why do you think Karna thinks that, Pandavas will win? Is it because the Pandavas are right, because they're following the dharma, because they're on the dharma side? Is it also because is it because, they have a lot of allies, they're very strong, they're just strong? Or is it because they have Krishna on their side? And according to Karna, it seems that, he thinks that the Pandavas will win because Krishna is on their side. Okay, it is Krishna on their side, and that is the reason why they will win. It is not because he thinks that Pandavas are right, or because Pandavas have a bigger army. It is because of Krishna that he thinks they will. And this is again very interesting, because Krishna also thinks, on the other hand, that it is because of Karna that Duryodhan is actually going into the battlefield. Now, finally, Karna ends the dream. He says that I and the other kings and the circle of barons shall doubtless enter the fire of Gandhava. So, in his final tone, we know that here Karna is very sure that he's going to die. He's very sure that he's going to hell, and still he chooses to sacrifice himself. He does not choose to fight on the side of Pandavas. He does not choose to be king, because again, all of those reasons which I told you, his loyalty, his awareness that he has sinned and must be punished, and so forth. Okay, now when he talks about his dream, and when he talks about why he refuses to take the offer which presents you, we understand how Karna really thinks, how his mind really works. Okay, and finally, next I will also touch upon the idea of when Kunti goes and tries to convince Karna. Okay, now before I move on to that, it is very important that women in Mahabharata, and we also saw this with Gandhari, right, where Gandhari told Dhritarashtra that you have to, when she was being more rational, and when Dhritarashtra was simply making a decision based on what he thought was just trying to make his son happy. So most of the women in Mahabharata, they speak the social truth. By social truth, I mean what is supposedly the right way of conduct for Kshatriya. Okay, now they are usually called Satyavadini, which means speaker of truth, or dharmacharini, one whose conduct is dharmic, or basically one who lives by dharma. Okay. Usually such speeches are made, and usually, you know, these women, and they come and they start talking about the social truth, or the right way of conduct. You know, they say when there is a crisis going on. Okay, when there is a crisis going on, then these women will come and speak, and then they will clarify the situation. And if it's a good character, or if it's a hero or a king who's not acting correctly, who's not following the code of conduct, then these women characters will come, and then they will remind them of what is your dharma, what you should be doing. Okay, so keep this in mind. And this is exactly what Kunti tries to do. So she comes and she tries to convince Karna to fight for the Pandavas, and she tries to, you know, tries to tell him the social conduct, the correct social conduct for being a Kshatriya. So she says, it's not at all right for you, son, innocently to serve innocently serve the Kauravas without knowing your real brothers. So Kunti is basically saying that. So Kunti basically becomes that Satyavadini. She's now trying to tell Karna the social truth, the social code of conduct. He says that, see, now you know you're a Kshatriya, so you must support your brother. Okay, you cannot keep supporting the other group, because now you know, so you must support it because this is your dharma. So she's trying to basically use basically use dharma to manipulate him. Okay, so she's very dramatic, and she also says that, you know, if you become the king, if you follow, if you join the Pandavas, then again you will become the king, and so on and so forth. Now, what is interesting here, and what is the difference here from between Dhritarashtra and Karna here, is that Karna does not care that when Kunti starts to tell him that ये तुम्हारा धर्म है कि तुम जब क्षत्रिय हो तुम्हें fight करना पड़ेगा पांडवा के लिए. He says that this is, you know, you are only doing this because you know, you're just doing this because you just want to protect your sons. Okay? So, and another interesting aspect of this whole scene is that the interference of gods. Because twice there's an interference of God. Once, Karna's father, sun god, Surya Dev, he comes and says कि नहीं मत लड़ो Kauravas के लिए, वो नहीं सुनता है उसकी. ठीक है? And then even Krishna is also a god, and he also tries to convince Karna कि don't fight for the Pandavas. And even though there is divine intervention, जिसको हम बोलेंगे divine intervention, even if there is direct intervention of the gods, Karna still doesn't listen. Okay, so there are two things happening. First thing is that gods, even human will, like Karna का जो decision है, that is even stronger than भगवान उसे क्या करने को बोल रहे हैं. Okay, that's one very important thing. Second thing is that the ultimate end, like the ultimate fate, we know is that there is going to be a war, and ये जो Krishna है, who is trying to avoid the war and so on and so forth. Even gods cannot change जो होना है. Even gods can't change destiny. And do keep this in mind that gods don't write destiny. Destiny is a completely different thing. Okay, so the attempt made by Krishna to change destiny ki Kurukshetra ka war na ho, and when Karna refuses, his refusal is also an indication of that even when gods try to interfere, even they can't change destiny. Okay, now another crucial aspect is the class differences or the caste differences. So when even though Karna is fighting, and it sort of looks like, and the reason why Karna is so angry and so upset, and why he's sort of mistreated, is because he's always reminded of the class he belongs to. Okay, so when he was in the very in the very beginning, when he challenges Arjun ki tum mere sath duel karo, tum mere sath lado, so I can show you ki I'm stronger than you, he's rebuffed by Kripa, who says that ये duel वुल का काम तुम्हारा नहीं है, ये तुम you can't do this, so you go and hold a whip मतलब चाबुक. And why a चाबुक? Because he is a Suta, and Sutas are the ones who are the charioteers, like जो chariot चलाते हैं. ठीक है? So he says that you can't hold the sword because ये तुम्हारा caste नहीं है. So it basically brings up the whole caste difference here. Okay, and even though Karna has given a shapat to Duryodhan, and Duryodhan has also given him his own kingdom called Anga. Even all of most of the Dedia, but nobody has offered Karna. No Kshatriya princes will marry Karna because he's a Suta. right? So again, there is, even though ki हाँ चलो they are very good friends and everything, and उसने उसको एक kingdom भी दे दिया, but yet even then there can't be any marriage ties. So again, you know, so you can see that how even thousands of years ago there was this whole caste distinction where one caste did not marry the other, and that has still continued even now in India. Okay, so, and even at the time of the war, Shalya refuses to become a charity. Like he says कि मैं karna का chariot नहीं चलाऊंगा because वो तो सूता है. So he is constantly facing caste discrimination. Okay, so in a sense, when Karna is fighting for his own rights, he's also fighting for the larger group of people, who are told that, you know, fighting, who are told that war is basically something which is only Kshatriyas do. And you know, no, and the idea of, you know, being a warrior and being a soldier, it's only Kshatriyas can know and others cannot. Okay, so you can also go back and think about how about Eklavya, and how Eklavya was not a Kshatriya, and you know, his he was his guru asked for his thumb so that he can no longer, you know, use the bow. Now, the idea of strategy in war, you have to realize that Krishna is actually very, very strategic. Okay, so he tries to basically tempt Karna, saying that he knows Karna को क्या चाहिए, and he tells them exactly कि तुम्हें ये मिलेगा, तुम्हें वो मिलेगा, तुम king बन जाओगे, तुम्हें द्रौपदी मिलेगी, ये सब वो सब. And at the end of the strategy, he applies this. He keeps telling Karna that, oh, but Pandavas कोई हरा नहीं सकता, Pandavas को कोई हरा नहीं सकता. He says that there is no shadow of doubt remaining that victory is sure of the Pandavas. The Pandavas' banner of triumph is out. Okay, so there is clearly, like, you know, no way of so he is basically, so he keeps saying that Pandava to jeetenge. So in a way he is demoralizing the enemy as well. Okay, however, the strategy is really not limited to men. The strategy is also used by Kunti, because you know how she tries to use the Kshatriya code of logic, saying that tum to Kshatriya ho, ab tum Pandava ke saath lado, so that, and why is she doing it? And she's doing it because basically she does not want Karna to kill any of the Pandavas. And Karna sort of realizes कि वो क्या कर रही है. वो बोलती है कि you have never acted in my interest like a mother, and now here you are enlightening me solely for your own interest. So he understands that, you know, she is talking about all these dharma as a Kshatriya and whatever, and this is really nothing. She's just doing it because she does not want Karna to kill her sons. So ultimately वो से promise करता है, ठीक है, I will not kill anybody except Arjun, and मैं किसी को भी एक वॉर के, मतलब अनलेस हम लोग वॉर में हैं, उसके बाहर कभी किसी को नहीं मारूंगा. ओके, नाउ the scene basically ends with a series of narratives. तो इस सीन में क्या होता है कि multiple characters will come, and this is basically happening right before the actual war. And अभी क्या होता है कि many characters come and they try to tell दुर्योधन कि तुम मत लड़ो. तो there are these short narratives इसमें, ठीक है. तो इसमें क्या है, ये last point है, and then we are done. Okay, so the Mahabharata as we know it is a long narrative. It's like, as we said, कि इसमें 1.8 million words हैं. It's a long narrative, and उस narrative के पीछे बहुत सारे छोटे-छोटे narratives हैं कि कोई इसे कुछ बोल रहा है, कोई उसे कुछ बोल रहा है, कोई ऐसे हो रहा है, कुछ वैसे हो रहा है. So it's like I tell you a story, and it would say कि, so it would be like, okay, so Arunima sat down and she told a story to blah blah blah, and then I will tell this. So it's like that. Okay, so here we are told, so यहाँ पे क्या होता है कि ancestral tales. So यहाँ पे both Bhishma और Drona, okay, they say that kinship, मतलब king होना, is actually not the right of the firstborn. जो सबसे बड़ा है, that does not mean कि उसको automatically वो right बन जाता है, but it is right of the deserving person. Okay, so in these narratives, basically Bhishma and Drona are important for the reason because they tell us the story of the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Okay, they recount the past as it took place. They tell the story of the Kauravas and the Pandavas. To Duryodhan, they tell him that सिर्फ बड़े होने से कोई king नहीं बन जाता. You must be deserving to be the king. Okay, and here and they do this so that, you know, Duryodhan has a clear understanding कि उसके family में पहले क्या हुआ था. All right. So Bhishma speaks of his father. Okay, he speaks of his father, King Shantanu, and he says that, you know, he speaks of the time when the kingdom was kingless, because remember Shantanu was Bhishma's father, and then Shantanu fell in love with somebody, and Bhishma, and then this new woman, uske father ne bola ki only when this woman has a child, only he will become the king, Bhishma will not become the king. So and Bhishma agrees, okay fine, so he takes the oath, you know. So Bhishma had taken the oath that he will not marry and he will not take the kingdom, but yet at the same time he tries to protect the family lineage. Okay, so every time when उसको लगता है कि क्या होगा फैमिली का, मैंने शपथ ले रखी है कि मैं शादी नहीं करूंगा और मैं बच्चे नहीं करूंगा, तो मैं कैसे बचाऊं कुरु क्लैन को। तो इसकी वजह से he brings the sage, the hermit Vyasa, right? He brings the hermit Vyasa, and he said, and it is through, and he says you impregnate my brother's wives. Okay, so he says कि आप आइए, and so it is Vyasa जिसके जो ये पांडव जो it is through Vyasa that these Pandavas come into being. Okay, and of course Vyasa is also the storyteller, and I told who wrote the Mahabharata, and I told you, right, that Vyasa is also part of the story. Okay, so and then what happens then, these Pandavas are born. Oh sorry, then sorry, not Pandavas. Then Pandu and Vidur and Dhritarashtra are born. And because Dhritarashtra was blind, and yes, even though he was the oldest son, because he was blind, he could not be king, and therefore Pandu became the king. Okay, and therefore Pandu became the king, and because Pandu was the king, that means that automatically his sons would become the king, would become his heirs. Okay. So therefore this story जो Bhishma को सुनाता है दुर्योधन को, it basically highlights that because Pandu was the king, तो जो rightful जो heirs हैं, जो next आएंगे, वो हस्तिना, वो पांडव होंगे, ठीक है। However, it also, like, the story also charts the problems and the continuing dominance of the family in a kingdom. Okay, so Bhishma tries to convince Duryodhan, because he wishes to protect the family line. He says that, look, Pandu, your father could not be the king because he was blind, so Pandu became the king, and I don't know, जो पांडु के जो बच्चे हैं वही आगे जाके किंग बनेंगे, तो उनका ही rightful share है हस्तिनापुर का, तो please इसकी वजह से do not have a war, do not fight. So this is what Bhishma tells him. Okay, now this story is picked up by Dronacharya. Okay, and he says that, your father was Pandu was a very good king. Okay, and then he sort of, he sort of tyags everything. He becomes a hermit. Like, so Pandu gives up everything, and after ruling for so many years, Pandu himself gives the lion's throne. Like, gives the lion's throne to Dhritarashtra and Vidura, and he goes to the forest. मतलब वो like civil life त्याग कर देता है और वो फॉरेस्ट रहता है hermit बन के, और वो अपने भाई को ही किंग बना देता है, वो धृतराष्ट्र को अपना किंगडम दे देता है, ठीक है। And Drona says, Dronacharya asks Duryodhan, and he says that, तुम्हारे जो पूर्वज हैं, they did so much sacrifice. Like, look at Pandu, उसको किंगडम मिला, but उसने अपने आप ही धृतराष्ट्र को दे दिया. So look at how your forefathers, they have sacrificed so much, and they have shared the kingdom to maintain the unity of the family. So he retorts, so why do you, Duryodhana, born in the family, resolve to break the family? So why can't you learn from the future and learn कि आपके साथ आगे, like, why can't you learn from what they have done? Why are you trying to break the family? Okay, and then he says that, जहाँ पे भीष्म जाएगा मैं भी वहीं जाऊंगा. And again he says that victory lies where the law lies. This is again, the same line which is retaliated as Karna said कि जीत उसी की होगी, the one who follow the law, जो धर्मा का पालन करेगा. Okay, now finally there are two more narratives, which is Vidur, and Vidur has been very, very vociferous matlab ki very direct about his critique for Duryodhana. He says that Vidura had blatantly described the cruelty and arrogance of Duryodhana. He calls it, he's possessed with greed, ignorable, ungrateful, his mind diseased with avarice, disobedient to the commandments of his father. So he says that, Duryodhana is Duryodhana is an evil man. He's greedy. He does not follow the commandments. He does not even obey his father. He does not see the law, as in he does not see the dharma. So, we should not be encouraging Duryodhana to do the war. And finally, Gandhari also chides her son. She also criticizes her son. She says, how dare you aspire in your folly to kinship Duryodhana? Gandhari, like Kunti, makes an assertion about the law, which is dharma, and its finality. The realm of the Kurus is ruled by succession. That's the family law come down to us. So asserting that we must follow it. So again, she says that, as I said before, which even Bhishma told Duryodhan, that Pandavas are the rightful heir, as in, like, the rightful owner, or the next people who should rightfully have the throne of Hastinapur. So you must follow the dharma, you must follow the law. So you're trying to go against it and you should not do it, and therefore she criticizes her son. However, of course, Duryodhan doesn't listen to him and listen to anybody, and ultimately we do have the war of Kurukshetra, right? So that is all. We are done with Mahabharata. I hope this was clear to all of you. I will be coming again on the. We will have the class again at the same time on the 15th, and we will be starting with Shudraka, which is another unit, and it's a play called the Little Clay Cart, the Little Clay Cart, something like that. And I don't know what the exact English translation is, but it's interesting. It's a funny play, so we will do that. I am going to just quickly go through all the comments. I mean, I can't go through, like, there are like nearly 366 comments, so I will go through them. If any of you want to leave, you can leave. We are done with the class. Okay. Somebody was asking me who's this Shashana. You really need to know a little bit of Mahabharata. This is not really a question you should be asking. Should we see Draupadi as a feminist icon? Yes, you can. You can see that. See, the thing is that for people who are asking how much of a long answer you have to write, that depends on your handwriting, really. But it should be at least. Because now you're typing everything, right? You're submitting everything online. So it has to be maybe 300, like at least try to make it like 400 words at least. Okay? That's not a lot. What is the meaning of untaught? Untaught simply means that it's just a way of saying that उसके जो धर्म के जो ideals है, what does dharma mean, and वो उसको क्या follow करना चाहिए, वो उसको पता नहीं है, तो उसको इसलिए Gandhari calls it untaught. Yeah, so this study material doesn't cover everything, but it will come before you have your exams. Okay, they are uploading it. Okay. Tanu Tanwar, is it compulsory to purchase book? Yes. If you're studying literature, you have to read books. Otherwise, you're in the wrong course. Last year Indian classical paper Saul, I don't have it, but I will ask somebody if they can send it. Okay, people, for those who have a WhatsApp group, I am just going to request you to reach out to your friends and everybody, and I will, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to send Vidushi, I think, and I'll send her the PPT, and she can just forward it to you all. But I am not in any WhatsApp group. I tried to join a group, but I couldn't because it was full. So I'm not in any group. Okay, guys, I'm just gonna. I don't know if you can do this, but if any of you can actually make a group on Teams and then add me in it, that's going to be much better, because Teams because like Microsoft Teams में अगर हमारा group है, तो it's going to be a lot easier for me to share documents and everything with you. Okay, because WhatsApp is very informal and I don't know कि सबके पास जा रहा है या नहीं. तो अगर आप एक group बना लें, Teams में बनाइए, ठीक है, यहाँ पे इस app में, and add everybody here, because and then I can just forward you the documents here. Okay. So do that. And abhi ke liye, please don't stress. आपके exams अभी आने नहीं वाले, so you don't need the PPT immediately. And I have it, so it's not going anywhere. Okay, you will get it. Please explain the response of nature. That just means that when human life में जब कुछ अच्छे humans के साथ कुछ बुरा होता है, तो even nature responds in angry ways. So भूकंप आना, चंद्रग्रहण होना, और सूर्यग्रहण होना, और thunder and lightning, all of this shows that the nature is angry about what is happening in the human world. Okay, and this is what was happening when the Kauravas were sent off to when the Pandavas were sent off to the forest. Which type of questions, I don't know. And honestly, like, difference between dharma and loyalty. Dharma means your duty and the law, and loyalty means loyalty. आप किसके साथ loyal हो, that's it. I mean, it's they're not the two same things. Okay. You don't need to purchase a guide for reference. जितना प्लीज गाइड मत खरीदिए. गाइड्स जो आपको मिलती है ना वो बहुत बुरी होती हैं मार्केट में. प्लीज बस बुक जो आपका जो टेक्स्ट है जो मैंने आपको बोला कि महाभारत की जो बुक है बस वो खरीदिए. ठीक है, महाभारत की बुक. और अगले क्लास के लिए शूद्रका, ठीक है, SUDRAKA, शूद्रका की बुक खरीदिए. ठीक है, वो अब बस जाइए किसी भी दुकान में, ठीक है, जहाँ पे यूनिवर्सिटी की बुक्स मिलती है. बोलिए फर्स्ट ईयर इंग्लिश ऑनर्स की इंडियन लिटरेचर की बुक्स है. अलग अलग बुक्स है, एक बुक नहीं है, काफी अलग, मतलब आपकी आई थिंक 4 बुक्स हैं. ठीक है, तो ये महाभारता एक है, कालिदासा एक है, शूद्रका एक है, एंड आई थिंक एक और है जो आपको श्रेया मैम पढ़ाएंगी, एंड देन कुछ बैकग्राउंड रीडिंग्स हैं. ओके, सो जस्ट बी केयरफुल. लाइक ये आपको 4 बुक्स, आप प्लीज एटलीस्ट कालिदासा, शूद्रका और क्या कहते हैं ये महाभारत की बुक खरीद लीजिए आप. ठीक है, जाके जाकर उन्हें बस बोलिए कि मुझे ये बुक्स चाहिए. एंड आई थिंक यू हैव another text, so just ask them, they will give you everything. Okay. Shubham, do Pandavas try to take revenge of the dicing game in the battle? Yes, they take the revenge. That's why the Kurukshetra war happens. अच्छा, और जिन जिनको जाना है आप चले जाइए. और जो यहाँ पे मुझे बोल रहे हैं ना मैम आई हैव अ क्वेश्चन, आप सीधा क्वेश्चन टाइप करिए, या आपको बोलने की जरूरत नहीं है, बिकॉज एज यू कैन सी यहाँ पे 400 कमेंट्स हैं. आई कांट रीड ऑल ऑफ देम. Why didn't Bhishma stop Kauravas to play the dicing game? Bhishma cannot, because Bhishma is not the king, so he doesn't have that authority. The only person who could have stopped was Dhritarashtra. Okay. Why Pandava played? They played the first game because it's a dharma, because the one king inviting them to come play a game, they cannot refuse, so they had to go. It's the law basically. Yes, Pandu died. Siddharth, that's right. No, that Richi Kumari, what they show on the TV is not the real. It's that like don't go by what they show on TV. Read the book. Okay, if you want to write in the exam कि एक ही डाइसिंग सीन हुई थी, आप लिख दीजिए, फिर फेल हो जाइए. ठीक है? TV is not the way to judge कि क्या चीज सही है क्या गलत है. Role of Krishna in dicing sequel, he's a deity. He's a god. Okay, he is not a human in that scene. जो मुझे क्वेश्चंस पूछ रहे हैं कि सॉल के बारे में मुझे नहीं पता. व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ पेरेंटेज? पेरेंटेज मीनिंग कि आपके 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 माँ बाप कौन है. ठीक है. Shazeen, Afsa, one can say Kauravas were uncertain about their power to win or protect their already owned clan. That's why they assumed every negative action Pandavas could take. That is such a good comment. Very good, Sezin. I hope I'm saying your name right. That is absolutely what it is. I'm so glad that you got it. Ma'am, why didn't Kauravas directly state Pandavas to death after making them play the game of dice? Because as a Kshatriya, you cannot just kill somebody. You can kill one Kshatriya and you can kill one Kshatriya to another only in a battlefield. If you're killing a random Kshatriya, that's not how it works. It's against the law. That's why they didn't kill him. Bhishma did not take any decisions to settle the conflict precisely because Bhishma is not somebody who is how do I say, is not he's not the king. He doesn't have the authority. Okay. Priya, so how can you write the answer simple present or simple past? You can choose whatever. Like it's up to you. Okay, it's up to you. Like whatever seems right to you. It's fine. What does predestination mean? Predestination means fate, destiny, जो already decided है, जो already decided है, जिसको आप नहीं टाल सकते, जो हम कहते हैं ना कि होनी को नहीं टाल सकते, जो होना है वो होगा. That is called predestination. Okay. Yes, he again decides to go back precisely क्योंकि उसको लगता है कि because उसको king ने बुलाया है and it is dharma that he must respond to the king. Okay, that's why he goes back. Karna's crisis of identity is that एक तरफ तो he knows that he's a Kshatriya, but at the same time when he is offered that he can be a Kshatriya now if he fights for the Pandavas, he still cannot take it up because he has this obligation towards his adoptive parents, and so he sort of, even though he is desperate for the Kshatriya identity, he still doesn't accept it because he knows that now he has a responsibility towards his adoptive parents who are Sutas. Okay. Is the class still live? Okay. No attendance in Sol. Okay, guys, I am going to Kumkum, ma'am. So, ma'am, can we say Karna was right in his own way? Yes, he was right. Like ultimately, when he realizes that he knows that he's supporting the wrong side, and he still chooses to support this wrong side, not because he knows that कि हाँ वो मर जाएगा. He's not going to be victorious. तो उसको पता है कि अगर मैं wrong side choose भी कर रहा हूँ तो मुझे punishment मिलेगी क्योंकि मैं मर जाऊंगा. So yes, he does. He ultimately does right in his own way. So good question. Code of conduct, yes. Rules and regulations for the Kshatriyas, yes. Why does she doesn't find her first son? I don't know. Like all these answers we are not given in the text. What was Krishna's motive behind tempting Karna? He wanted the war to not happen. अगर Karna उनके side में चला जाता तो फिर war नहीं होता because दुर्योधन उसके अलावा war नहीं कर सकता. Did Duryodhan only want Karna for winning the battle? Yes, maybe, most probably. Shauna, can we say Klavya had the same ideology as Karna but was suppressed in his early childhood? Yes, you can. You'd be absolutely right. Shauna, that is a way they might have because there's so many what ifs, could ifs, ये हो सकता था, वो हो सकता था. So we don't know कि अगर वैसा होता भी तो Kauravas could have won if Karna wouldn't have played his armor. But do keep in mind कि आपके syllabus में नहीं है, okay? दिलप्रीत, आई एम सॉरी, अगर आपको थोड़ी डिफिकल्टी हो रही है इंग्लिश वगैरह फॉलो करने में, आई विल डू वन थिंग, जस्ट बी लाइक एक बार आप ऑनलाइन गूगल करिए, ठीक है, और जस्ट गूगल करिए महाभारत की स्टोरी, महाभारत प्लॉट, और आपको एक एक शॉर्ट समरी पढ़ लीजिए उसकी, तो आपको थोड़ा आइडिया हो जाएगा, ठीक है, बिकॉज अभी पूरी कहानी आपको नहीं, अब महाभारत हो गया खत्म, अब दोबारा ये नहीं होगा ये, ठीक है. Tapush, according to Karna's dream, can it be inferred that Pandavas only won the war because they had Krishna on his side and victory simply granted them? Yes, yes, absolutely. Very good. Krishna doesn't want the war to happen simply because बहुत सारे लोग मरेंगे war में और कुछ नहीं, ठीक है? Krishna, yes, and Krishna is where there is dharma, and I think that indirectly Karna knows that is because dharma is on the side of God. Absolutely, again, very good points, Shron of Kaushik. Krishti, was it really all about self-punishing, also standing for the people? Yes, that is pretty much what Karna did. Shrishti, I'm just answering your question about what you asked about Karna. If you're still here, I know कि काफी 15 minutes हो गए almost. What is Suta identity? Suta identity वो है जो रथी होते हैं ना, जो रथ चलाते हैं, उन्हें सुता बोलते हैं. Why was Lord Krishna absent during the entire sequence? Because you know you have to understand that ultimately epics जो है ना वो लोगों के बारे में होता है. So it could be about people who are half gods, half different, but पूरे टाइम भगवान नहीं होंगे वहां पे, ठीक है? तो जैसे कि इवन रामायणा में राम भगवान है, बट even like mostly जो like the way he's depicted, he's also depicted in a very human way, and Krishna is basically a proper god, okay? So इसलिए he is not in the scene, he can't be in all the scenes, नहीं तो everything can be controlled by him, right? Very good question. Why did Kunti request Karna to understand the dharma and support the Pandavas when she didn't follow her dharma as well? Absolutely, Harjeet. Very good question. I'm sorry कि मुझे 15 मिनट लग गए वहाँ पहुँचने में. It's an excellent question. Of course, she's a hypocrite. She's a hypocrite. She left her son and उसने खुद धर्मा फॉलो नहीं किया, but वो अब करना को आ गई बोलने के लिए कि अब तुम धर्मा फॉलो करो, और वो इसलिए बोल रही है कि उसको अपने बाकी 5 पांडव बच्चों को बचाना है. जो scenes मैंने explain नहीं करे, that's because it's not in the course, नेहा गुप्ता. Like I will not explain scenes जो नहीं है जिसमें. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I have already gone 15 minutes over. I am sorry कि मैं सारे comments आपके नहीं देख पा रही हूँ. अभी बहुत सारे comments हैं, and it is just not possible. It's a fun last question I'm taking, which is tempting Karna by saying him that he could lie with Draupadi if he joins Pandavas. It's not against the dharma, because what he's saying is, of course, it's very weird. Like what he's saying is that agar तुम पांडव, one of the Pandavas बन जाते हो, like अगर तुम like you know, when you become one of the Pandavas, when you join them, then you also will get to marry Draupadi, and that's how you will sleep with her. Okay, it's not that ऐसे ही कर लिया, ठीक है? Okay, everyone. I hope this is helpful. See you on the 15th. Please buy Sudra का, या फिर थोड़ा online थोड़ा पढ़ लीजिए, उसको Sudra का खरीद लीजिए. अगर नहीं खरीदना तो I will still explain you कि क्या है उसमें. So and yes, this is the last class for Mahabharata, and आपने जितने भी questions अभी पूछे हैं, thank you very much. I'm so sorry कि I could not go through all of this because बहुत almost 500 questions आ गए हैं, ठीक है? So all the best, and I will see you on 15th. I hope आपको helpful लगा हो, and I will try and figure out a way कि आप सबको PPTs पहुंच जाए. Okay, bye and take care everyone. Bye.